Hello students, this is the recap for today's discussion of Chapter 2 of Theory and Divinity, Understanding Myth. In today's class, we have gone over the assignments for next class. First of all, be sure to read Chapter 3 of Hesiod, Creation. There'll be materials in the content folder in Chapter 3. We will do a short writing activity in class based upon the reading of Hesiod, so be sure to bring a notebook or paper and a pen or pencil. Thinking back to last class, we want to keep in mind that when we are studying myths, we need to take care in drawing conclusions about them. Every myth should be studied in its own time and place, taking into the context in which it was given, and if possible, in its own language. So we're very fortunate in that we have excellent translations of the different myths, but we also need to keep in mind that there's no way we'll never know everything about them. We can know more about them if we read the original languages, but the fact that we don't read those original languages means we should take extra care in interpreting them. When we've done our work well and interpreted them well, there are many lessons and benefits available to us from them. As I had mentioned this book before, I want to mention it again, Jonathan Shea's Achilles in Vietnam. In this book, Vietnam veterans who are suffering from extreme PTSD were able to find a lot of benefit in reading the Iliad and relating to the characters in the Iliad and the troubles and tribulations they went through when they were in Vietnam. Some key concepts in this chapter were who studies myth and why. Myth is a window into the worlds of other cultures and other times, and characteristics of oral myths and characteristics of written myths. So interests in mythology, those study are psychologists. One in particular is Carl Jung, spelled J-U-N-G. Carl Jung was one of the earliest and important psychologists in the early 20th century and worked with Sigmund Freud. And he really looked at how myth helps us give us an idea about the collective consciousness of a particular society. In addition, of course, sociologists, anthropologists, and folklorists are interested in myth and study them for important reasons, as do historians, archaeologists, scientists, and philosophers. The historians and archaeologists can find glimpses or clues to actual events that happened. So in class today, we discussed the the myth of Atlantis and how Atlantis was buried by water and was submerged. And people looked at that and thought, that seems strange. And then they've looked at either vast underwater landslides or the eruption of the volcanic caldera at Santorini Island in Greece. Either one of those could have caused a very large tsunami that would have wiped out cities along the coast in the Minoan civilization and would have led to the Atlantis myth. Others, of course, interested in mythology are artists and art historians. Here we have a vase that illustrates activity from or events that happened in Aeschylus's play, 7 Against Thebes. We have King Creon, who is up in his battlements, and we have a man who is trying to fight his way in, and this is one of the myths exposed in Aeschylus's play, 7 Against Thebes. This is the third play in the Oedipus series, trilogy. Here we have Zeus and his desires again. He is on the right-hand side. There's an old woman in the middle, and Zeus is trying to make it with her. So again, mythology helping us understand the things we see in art. Oral narratives are characterized by repetition. We see this in the passage in Gilgamesh, in which Siduri talks to Gilgamesh. We see this in parallelisms, particularly in Semitic poetry, such as the Hebrew Bible. Stock phrases, formulas, and modular units are a very important aspect of oral narrative, oral myths, and then lists of people and places. Stock phrases, formulas, and myths and modular units can be very helpful to a performer because he or she can use them to not only show their strength and their prowess in telling the myth, but listeners enjoy hearing them. And it also gives you a chance to think of what's going to come next in the myth or make something up. So it gives you something that you can throw in. Lists of people and places are used because for many different reasons, but two of them. One is to make things more approachable to the audience, so you can mention places that they know of. And then if you use long lists of places and people, it shows your prowess, your excellence, and your knowledge as a storyteller. Oral narratives are characterized by paratactic storytelling. This is very short, clipped syntax. So, veni, vidi, vici, I came, I saw, I conquered. Examples are in the Gospels, such as Mark, where Mark talks about when Jesus calls the disciples. And let's see here. These examples are given such that Mark is the shortest gospel, and it almost seems like an eyewitness. So here's from the first chapter of Mark. He was walking along the lake of Galilee. He saw Simon and Simon's brother Andrew casting the net in the lake, for they were fishermen. And Jesus said to them, "Come after me, and I will make you fishers of people." And at once they left their nets and followed him. So no subordination of clauses, just this event, this event, this event. These are also, we find these kinds of narrative in the Old Testament, in Genesis, Joshua, and Chronicles. Written narratives, by contrast, are easier to understand, but more challenging to interpret. So the written author has taken various oral myths and then combines them together and harmonizes them, usually with some artistic goal. And he or she puts on them their overall worldview. Ovid's Metamorphoses is a good example of this. Ovid lived at a time in the Roman Empire when they're going under vast political changes, and they've gone from having the Roman Senate and democracy to the Roman emperors. He was exiled from Rome, and so many things were in flux that he took the various creation myths and made them into emphasize a way of the metamorphosizing and changeableness of reality. So these oral myths have characteristics of rationalization, where there are things in the spoken myths where things might be inconsistent or conflicting. Those are redacted and rationalized. And examples of this are Snorri Sturluson and also in Beowulf. Thank you, and we'll see you on Thursday for a discussion of Hesiod.